tonight's headlines. Activist Tony Chung flees to Britain to seek asylum, prompting Hong Kong authorities to demand that he returns home. Cathay Pacific cancels flights and blames the peak flu season for making many pilots ill. And a woman who allegedly attacked her teenage son falls to her death from her building in Tuen Mun.
The Correctional Services Department has ordered activist Tony Chung to return to Hong Kong after he fled to Britain to seek political asylum. The former leader of the now-defunct pro-independence group Student Localism was the youngest person to be jailed under the national security law. He was released in June and placed under supervision for 1 year. In a Facebook post today, Chung said the department allowed him to go abroad for emotional relief. The 22-year-old went to Japan last Wednesday and was supposed to come back on Christmas Day, but turned up instead in Britain. The Correctional Services Department today urged Chung to return and asked other law enforcement agencies to arrest him. Deputy Commissioner Kenneth Leung clarified that the former student leader did not need approval to travel abroad, but had to inform his department about the trip. Chung claimed that his supervision order, which barred him from working in specific jobs, was later revised to stop him from giving speeches and interviews. But Leung said the terms can change based on each person's rehabilitation needs.
For Chung's case, he's violated the national security law for publishing something related to or will violate the national security law. We have to let him do not do it again, and that's why related supervision requirement will be imposed on him. There's no such things about violating the freedom of speech.
In Beijing, Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning said Chung's attempt to evade responsibility is in vain and he will be investigated. Separately, sources said the parents of Agnes Chow, another activist who fled the city, went to a police station in Tai Po to help in an investigation. Officers have vowed to arrest 27-year-old Chow for failing to report to police as part of her bail conditions. The former student leader now lives in Canada. Maisie Mock, Cable News.
Hong Kongers planning to fly out of the city have been warned of possible disruptions. This is because flag carrier Cathay Pacific cancelled a number of outbound flights from today until New Year's Day after many of its pilots fell sick. Out of a total of 389 scheduled departures today, 19 operated by Cathay were scrapped. Some of the affected flights were to Asian destinations, including Bangkok, Beijing, and Seoul. It will be better tomorrow as Cathay tentatively cancelled only 10 flights. But people overseas who wish to spend the New Year with their families might not be able to return to Hong Kong in time. The airline tentatively cancelled 10 flights, which were scheduled to arrive on Saturday, 8 on Sunday, and 3 on New Year's Day. Cathay has apologized for the inconvenience, but it noted that December is the peak of the flu season and the number of pilots calling in sick has been higher than anticipated. The carrier added that overall operations remain normal and flight cancellations since mid-December were less than 1% of all passenger flights. Paul Weatherfield, who chairs the Aircrew Officers Association, believes the lack of manpower will continue in the coming year.
Going forward, next year the recovery will be even slower because this year the airline has been concentrating on just training new captains. Next year, and for the rest of the recovery, the airline must train first officers and train captains. So it's almost 50% more training.
Weatherfield suggested that Cathay lure back the 1,800 pilots who were made redundant or had resigned. Janice Lowe, Cable News.
A 55-year-old woman who allegedly attacked her teenage son has died after falling from an upper floor of her building in Tuen Mun. The 17-year-old son called police at around 11 p.m. last night, saying his mother attacked him with a hammer and a knife. Officers arriving in Wu King Estate found the woman unconscious. She was certified dead in Tuen Mun Hospital. Her son sustained head, neck, and arm injuries. It was alleged that the pair had quarreled over the youth's academic problems.
Police were alerted at around 9:30 a.m. that a fire had broken out in a flat in Holly Road. As smoke spread to at least 2 floors above the Happy Valley unit, some residents said they heard an explosion. Firefighters extinguished the blaze in an hour. An investigation showed that the fire started when an electric heater became excessively hot. A 63-year-old man who felt unwell after inhaling smoke was sent to Retunji Hospital.
The anguish continues for Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Every available space in this hospital in Rafah was used to treat people wounded by Israeli airstrikes. At least 30 people in Rafah were killed when their building was bombed. Deaths were reported elsewhere in Gaza as Israel extended its offensive in retaliation for a Hamas raid 11 weeks ago. Since then, about 21,500 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed, with thousands more believed to be buried under demolished buildings.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has expressed concern over the plight of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. At least 300 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli troops and Jewish settlers since October. About 5,000 Palestinians were injured, and many others were forced to leave their homes.
The use of military tactics and weapons in law enforcement contexts, and the use of unnecessary or disproportionate force by the Israeli security forces are extremely troubling. There has also been a sharp rise in settler attacks with an average of 6 incidents per day, such as shootings, burning of homes and vehicles, and the uprooting of olive trees, the lifeline to Palestinian farmers. The dehumanization of Palestinians that characterizes many of the settlers' actions is very disturbing and must cease immediately.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has suffered another setback in his bid to return to the White House, with the state of Maine removing him from its primary ballot for next year's election. The decision was made by Maine's Secretary of State Sheena Bellows after voters in the state challenged Trump's conduct during the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol 2 years ago. A similar ruling was made by the Colorado Supreme Court earlier this month. But the U.S. Supreme Court is expected to have the final say on whether Trump can run for office. He is the frontrunner in the race for the Republican Party nomination.
More than 40 people were killed when a fuel tanker crashed and exploded in the West African state of Liberia. Over 80 others were admitted to hospital with severe burns. People rushed to collect fuel when the tanker overturned, but an explosion followed, causing the casualties. The tragedy in the small town of Totoda in central Liberia happened on Tuesday, but footage of the incident has just been released.
Restaurants that partner more than one food delivery platform face fewer restraints and greater freedom in setting prices from today. This is because Deliveroo and Foodpanda pledged to amend their agreements with eateries after the authorities raised concerns about weakened competition. The two companies said restaurants that decide to collaborate with new or small delivery platforms will still enjoy commercial incentives offered by Deliveroo and Foodpanda. The Competition Commission said the breakthrough will benefit customers who will have a greater choice of food and pay less. The city's deficit for the 8 months ending in November has exceeded Financial Secretary Paul Chen's estimation of over $100 billion for the current fiscal year. The government announced that the deficit stood at $164.1 billion. But there was a surplus of $8.8 billion in November as citizens and companies began paying their salaries and profits taxes. Hong Kong's fiscal reserves were at $670.7 billion at the end of last month.